Good afternoon and welcome to the 17th technical session of the international conference titled Imagining the Post-Coronavirus World. So the speaker for this session is Federico Luisetti. Federico Luisetti is an associate professor of Italian studies and environmental humanities at the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. Among his publications is the co-edited volume, The Anatomy of the Earth, Philosophy, Politics, and Autonomy in Europe and the Americas 2015. This session will be chaired by Professor Vivek MD, who's an assistant professor at the School of Liberal Arts and Human Sciences at AURO University and teaches political science and public policy. Once the session is over, the chair will take up questions if any. I welcome Professor Federico Luisetti to begin. Over to you, sir. Please.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and thank you to Professor Vivek and to the organizer of this wonderful event. I'm glad to be here with you today and share some thought, and I look forward to your question. So can you hear me? All is fine?
Yes, perfect.
All right, excellent. So imagining a post-coronavirus world demands that we separate the future from the past, and from the present, and the present from the past. But is this possible? How different was the time before the pandemic? Did the virus create a new world? I am aware that a global crisis is unfolding, that state borders have been reinforced, that mass digital surveillance, police measures, nationalism, and authoritarianism have been unleashed, that the vulnerable are exposed to the brutal violence of viral death and famine, that while the rich are tweeting and enjoying their immunity, waiting for the end of this mayhem or capitalizing on the many financial opportunities that it provides. And yet, I wonder if despite the collapse of our certainties, what we're witnessing is truly discontinuous, a radically new arrangement of power in life requiring other forms of knowledge, or if instead we're experiencing the resolution of a latency, the closing of a gap. I embrace this second hypothesis. The current pandemic may be the end state of a time delay between a structure and its effects. It allows us to grasp almost three-dimensionally the articulation of the past and the present, the accelerated composition of dispersed causes and painful consequences. The virus does not only exacerbate divisions and facilitate the geopolitical of imperial powers and nationalist states, it fulfills deep structures of inequality and environing, expressing the hallucinatory realism of the neoliberal state of nature. In his work, Discipline and Punish, Michel Foucault recounts the orders introduced in France in the late 17th century, when cities were hit by the confusion of the plague. I quote, "The plague-stricken town was traversed throughout with hierarchy, surveillance, observation, writing. Confronted with the great epidemic of the plague, European states experimented what Foucault defined as a disciplinary form of power, an extensive power that bears in a distinct way over all individual bodies." End of quote. Most importantly, the historical event of the plague was immediately perceived as the utopia of the perfectly governed city. In order to see perfect disciplines functioning, rulers dreamt of the state of plague, writes Foucault. The state of plague is the state of nature in which what is natural are individual bodies, not the primitive impulses of imaginary savages. For this reason, the conjecture about primitive humanity of European jurists and political philosophers such as Thomas Hobbes gave way to the empirical surveillance of physical bodies infected by the disease, the management of their lives in schools, hospitals, and prisons, the registration of the space they occupy. It is not hard to recognize the feature of this all-disciplinary state of nature in the measures introduced to contain the coronavirus pandemic. Through electronic devices, red zones and social distancing, mass testing and contact tracing, abnormal contagious bodies are located, segmented, analyzed, and quarantined. Their medical condition, coupled with their permanent visibility, dictates control and coercive assignment, the supervising of their behavior, their placement in the correct space and institution. Digital technologies amplify an old organization of subjects as pathological beings. The coronavirus does not only affect individuals, but also population. Since the natality and productivity rate, health indicators, and mortality of populations can be managed at this scale, another state of nature, a truly biopolitical state of nature, takes charge of the regulation of the lives of the masses in the circumstances created by the coronavirus. Once the pandemic is recognized as a long-lasting phenomenon, and not simply as an emergency, the virus is approached in terms of population dynamics. By becoming endemic, the coronavirus appears as a natural factor among others, a biological feature of the socioeconomic life of populations, weakening their strength, shortening the working week, imposing economic costs related to declining productivity and public hygiene. The diffusion, intensity, and duration of the pandemic merges with the life form of the population. Despite the useful analytical insights that Foucault theorization of disciplinary and biopolitical power can provide, we should not forget that these intuitions have been denounced, and rightly so, by post-colonial and feminist thinkers who have recalled how population and bodies are not and have never been an undifferentiated whole. They have not been regulated exclusively as a productive life force. Bodies have been disciplines also as the site of reproduction. Women's bodies are the quintessential target of patriarchal technologies of power. They are the natural commons, constantly enclosed in all regimes of production and reproduction. And populations are not just the European masses of Foucault's biopolitics. The colonial world and its racialized bodies have been exposed for centuries to modes of government that enhance settlers' life through death. This is not biopower, but necropower, the sovereignty of violence, disposable people as the infrastructure of our contemporary planetary state of nature. While those belonging to the global middle class post videos of lockdown cooking, singing, and poetry, daily wages across the world try to avoid starvation and expose themselves to contagion. In Guayaquil and Manau, thousands of corpses devastated by COVID-19 pile up in the streets and are collected in cardboard coffins. The coronavirus has revealed the fabric of our savage ecologies. In an age of pandemics and resilience factors, climate dystopias and adaptation metrics, toxic slums and sustainable energy, a new state of nature has emerged, a neoliberal variant of the pervasive apparatus of Western political naturalism. Its main feature is the implosion of any sharp distinction between violence and security, ecocide and value creation. Epidemic injustice, financial turbulence, climate disequilibrium, biodiversity loss, poverty and toxicity are now folded into global disease prevention, risk assessment, and ecosystems regulation. Chaos and order are no longer separated by a colonial geography of savagery and civilization. They are simultaneous and interlocked states of the neoliberal planet. The coronavirus may thus serve the purpose that the state of plague had for the rulers of early modern Europe, but at a planetary scale. It is the utopia of the perfectly governed Earth system. The coronavirus-stricken world is an actual scenario that offers the chance to test the models of the neoliberal state of nature, the efficacy of its cynical arrangements of stability and disorder, zero-carbon citizens and starving peasants. In this context, a post-coronavirus world can only begin to take shape once the mechanisms of the neoliberal state of nature are denounced and abandoned, and another reality emerges. Not the one world of the American-led globalization, but a pluriverse, a decolonized planet in which many worlds fit. The secret concealed by the neoliberal state of nature, that climate change and now the coronavirus are unmasking, is the structural conflict between the environment and market economy, the incompossibility of planetary life and capitalist accumulation. The corporate jargon of sustainability can only mystify this contradiction. But the long-term solution is for neoliberalism exclusively a technocratic energy transition. the replacement of the finite resources of fossil fuels with infinitely renewable energy sources. Abundant oil, subjugated bodies, and the environment as cheap reservoirs and sinks for the production and waste have sustained until now the neoclassical economics illusion that markets are a transcendental, autonomous universe. To guarantee its survival after the coronavirus pandemic and before a climate meltdown, the neoliberal state of nature must double the destruction of the planet accomplished by the carbon economy with the destruction of the planet through renewable energy industrial infrastructures, expropriating all other aspects of nature, beginning with the global south. Land grabs of indigenous territories for wind power, crops and mining, hydroelectric power plants running thousands of villages, intensive smart agriculture exhausting the soil, impoverishing rural population and feeding the biofuel industry, invasive pines and eucalyptus plantation offsetting emissions in the North carbon market schemes, and so on. I wonder why we should bestow upon the modelers of the neoliberal state of nature the exclusive right to learn from the current pandemic. In their hands, this tragedy can only be used as a laboratory for improving their hallucinatory Earth systems. Let's start instead from another premise. The coronavirus is more than its homicidal fury. It is a capricious Earth being. This microscopic monster is seeking its reproductive happiness by spreading and co-living, killing and liberating on its own terms. Along the way, it has also revived the pastoral imagination, cleared the skies in the most polluted cities across the globe, and saved thousands of lives from pollution-related illnesses. And it has been also able to arrest the world economy, reminding that market relations are not at all free. They depend on nature's favor. The ambivalent force of the coronavirus contains a clear message. The neoliberal state of nature and its ecologies can't be stopped. Other ways of living can arise once we free our minds, bodies, and environments from the spell of the globalization of nature. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Prof.
I look forward to any questions.
For the wonderful perspective on the impact of the neoliberal industrial capitalism and linking it up to how the whole process starts with the 17th century plague and sort of excessive dependence on fossil fuel and the exact links with market capitalism and nature.